The night I deleted everything, it was 2:47 in the morning. I wasn't crying anymore. That part was over. I had cried so much in the weeks before that night that I think my body had simply run out. What I felt instead was something quieter, something almost cold, like standing at the edge of a decision that you know will change you, and choosing to jump anyway. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, back against the wall, phone in my hand, and I looked at 2 years of my life sitting inside a camera roll, the trips, the inside jokes saved in screenshots, the voice notes I could never bring myself to delete, the shared Google Doc we titled Our Future, where we had written down the city we'd moved to, the names we liked for children we hadn't had yet, the kind of life we were sure we were building. And I deleted it. All of it. What happened after that? That is the story I want to tell you today. My name for this story is Marcus, and I want you to understand who Marcus was before the breakup, because that context matters. Marcus was the kind of man who loved deeply and completely. He did not do things halfway. When he fell for Danielle, he fell with everything he had. He rearranged his schedule around hers. He learned to love the music she played too loud on Saturday mornings. He started drinking black coffee because she said it tasted better that way, and somewhere along the line he forgot he had ever liked it sweet. That is what love does sometimes. It doesn't take things from you all at once. It borrows them slowly. A habit here, a preference there, a boundary you quietly moved because you wanted peace more than you wanted to be right. For 2 years, Marcus gave everything to a woman who gave him just enough to stay. Danielle was not cruel in the obvious ways. She never shouted, she never threatened, but she had a particular kind of nonchalance that is its own form of cruelty. The kind where she would forget plans without apology, go quiet for days without explanation, and respond to his deepest feelings with a shrug and a subject change. He kept telling himself she just wasn't good at expressing herself. He kept making excuses that were really just ways of shrinking his own needs to fit the size of what she was willing to give. He just hadn't admitted it yet. The end did not come with screaming. It rarely does when the relationship is the kind that was mostly good, mostly kind, mostly safe. The end came on a Tuesday. Danielle sat across from him at their kitchen table and told him, with the same casual ease she used for everything, that she was done. No long build-up, no tearful confession. She said it the way you tell someone you are not hungry for dinner. Flat. Already decided. She said she had not been happy, that things had run their course, that she thought they both knew it. She did not cry. She never cried. And Marcus fell apart. He begged. He is not ashamed to admit that now, but in that moment he was begging with everything he had. He asked her what he had done wrong. He told her he would change. He listed, out loud, every version of himself he was willing to become if it meant she would stay. He cried the kind of crying that does not look elegant, the kind that takes over your whole body, that makes sounds you didn't know you could make. He grabbed her hand. She let him hold it, but she did not hold back. He said, "Please, just tell me what I need to do." She said, "There's nothing to do, Marcus. I've already made up my mind." And that was it. She stood up, calmly, picked up her keys the way she always did, like nothing in the room had just shattered, and she left. The door closed softly behind her. Not a slam, just a soft final click. And Marcus sat at that table for a very long time, in the silence of a woman who had never once fought for him, wondering why he had spent 2 years fighting so hard for her. The weeks that followed were survival, not living. Survival. He went to work. He came home. He ate things he did not taste. He answered messages with words that meant nothing. And every night, without fail, he opened his camera roll and scrolled through 2 years of photographs, like a man trying to convince himself that something had been real. That was the trap he did not know he was in. Here is what the photographs were doing to Marcus, and what they might be doing to you. Every time he opened that camera roll, every time he read an old message, every time he played a voice note just to hear her voice, his brain released a small flood of dopamine, the same chemical released during the relationship itself. His brain was not healing, it was feeding. Neuroscience tells us that the brain processes the loss of a long-term relationship in the same region that processes physical pain. But it also tells us something equally important, that rumination, the act of repeatedly returning to memories, keeps the neural pathways of attachment alive and active. In other words, every time Marcus looked at those photos, he was not remembering Danielle. He was reattaching to her, over and over, keeping the wound open with his own hands and the Google Doc. Our future. The list of plans, the city, the names, the life they were going to have. That document was perhaps the most dangerous thing on his phone. Because grief over a person is one thing, but grief over a future that never happened, over a version of your life that existed only in a document, is a different kind of pain entirely. It is mourning something that was never real. And you cannot heal from a ghost. Marcus had been carrying that ghost for weeks, until the night he decided to put it down. He started with the photos, not quickly, slowly. One by one at first, then in batches, each one a small goodbye. The trip to the coast where they had gotten lost and laughed about it for hours, her face on Christmas morning, the blurry selfie they had taken on their first anniversary, both of them slightly out of frame because neither of them knew how to hold the camera right. Then the videos, her voice, her laugh, the 10-second clip he had taken of her dancing badly in their kitchen, which he had watched so many times in the weeks after the breakup that he could replay it in his mind without the phone. He deleted that one last. Then the messages. Not just the last ones, all of them. 2 years of conversation, the mundane ones. Can you grab milk on the way home? The significant ones, the ones he had screenshotted because he wanted to remember exactly how she had said what she said. Gone. And then, he opened the Google Doc. He read it one last time. The city they had chosen, the neighborhood, the life they had imagined in careful, hopeful detail. And he deleted it. And then, he closed the laptop, and he sat in the silence, and he waited to feel destroyed, but that is not what happened. What Marcus felt in the hours and days after that night surprised him. He had expected emptiness. He had expected regret. He had expected to wake up the next morning and immediately want to check if anything could be recovered. What he felt instead was something he had almost forgotten the name of. Space. The particular kind of space that exists when you stop filling every quiet moment with someone else's memory. When your phone no longer holds a version of the past you can disappear into. When the future is unwritten again, not because it was taken from you, but because you chose to make it blank. He started noticing things he had stopped noticing. The way his apartment looked in the morning light, the sound of his own thoughts without the background noise of grief, the fact that he had preferences, real ones, his own, about how he wanted to spend a Saturday. He was not over her. Let's be honest about that. Deleting the photos did not delete the love, it never does. But it broke the loop. The daily ritual of reopening the wound, the passive mourning that had become his default state. He stopped being a man waiting to heal and started being a man who was healing. Week by week, slowly he came back to himself. He remembered that he had wanted to learn guitar before he had been in a relationship. He remembered that he had always preferred his coffee with cream. He remembered that he was, fundamentally, a whole person, not half of something missing its other part. He was, for the first time in months, okay. And that is when she called. It had been 4 months. 4 months since that Tuesday at the kitchen table. 4 months since the silence. 4 months since the night on the floor. And now, her name was on his screen. He answered. Her voice was smaller than he remembered. Gone was the cool, unbothered tone he had spent 2 years trying to reach. She sounded uncertain, almost fragile. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She said she had made a mistake. She said, and here is the part he had once, in his darkest moments, fantasized about hearing, that she missed him, that she wanted to try again, that she was sorry. And then she said something that cracked him open just a little, not enough to let her back in, but enough for him to understand exactly what had happened. She said, I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. And Marcus listened. He let her finish. He did not interrupt. The old Marcus, the one on the floor at 2:47 in the morning, would have said yes before she finished the sentence. Would have driven to her apartment that same night. Would have convinced himself that this was the version of her he had always been waiting for. But that man had spent 4 months becoming someone new. And when she was done, he was quiet for a long moment. And then he said something that he could not have said 4 months ago. Something that only became possible because of everything he had done in the silence between then and now. He said, I believe you, and I'm glad you see it now, but I'm not available for what you're describing anymore. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, not even out of pride, but because he meant it. The man who had sat on that floor at 2:47 in the morning had not deleted the memories to punish her. He had deleted them to free himself, and it had worked, more completely than he had imagined it could. She had come back, and he had discovered in that moment that he no longer needed her to. Marcus's story is not about deleting memories to erase love. Love cannot be deleted. That is not how it works, and anyone who tells you otherwise has never loved deeply. Marcus's story is about something else entirely. It is about the difference between honoring a past and being imprisoned by it. The photographs, the videos, the future plans, they were not the relationship, they were the artifacts of it. And when the relationship ended, keeping those artifacts on constant display was not an act of love. It was an act of prolonged grief dressed up as loyalty. Deleting them was not a betrayal of what was real. It was an act of mercy toward himself. And this is what healing actually requires. Not the absence of feeling, but the removal of the triggers that keep you returning to pain before the wound has had time to close. If you are sitting with a camera roll full of someone who is no longer yours, I am not telling you what to do. Only you know where you are in your journey. But I will tell you what Marcus would tell you. The version of you that existed before them is still in there. A little quieter, maybe. A little more careful. But still there, still whole, still capable of the kind of mornings that feel like they belong entirely to you. You are allowed to make space for him. You are allowed to choose yourself. If Marcus's story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are in that place right now, the 2:47 a.m. place, know that what comes after is worth everything it costs you to get there. I'll see you in the next one.